Today I'm attempting another hardcore Nuzlocke, this time on Pokémon Lets Go Eevee, and I'm only going to be using gift Pokémon. This includes the Eevee you get at the start of the game, any Pokémon gifted to you by an NPC, and fossil Pokémon. I won't be using any items in battle, except held items. Things like berries, and things like the charcoal or the magnet are absolutely allowed. I have to nickname every team member, and I've got to change the battle style to set. If you don't know what set battle style is, it basically means that when I defeat an enemy trainer's Pokemon, I get the option to switch to a different team member. If I want to switch on set mode, I don't get that option. I just have to switch next turn and get hit with whatever move they use. I won't be leveling higher than the next gym leader's ace Pokemon, and if one of my team members faints in battle, I either have to release it or put it in the box forever, never to be used again. Eevee gets access to Double Kick really early in this game, so with Brock being the first gym leader and using rock types, it makes this battle easy. In fact, this Eevee that you get at the start of the game is pretty overpowered, and the early game is pretty easy with this Eevee. It has access to pretty much every type of move you can imagine. You don't get them all straight away, but you do get a good variety to start with. I thought this run was going to be really easy, but as I get further through the run, Eevee stops being quite so effective, and it does actually get pretty difficult towards the end. I do all of these runs on my Switch, which means if I want to get items like rare candies or citrus berries, I have to actually farm them, and if I want to level up my team, I just have to fight wild encounters or other trainers to level them up. This can sometimes take hours just to get my team up to the next level cap, so if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel or liking the video, it would make it all worth it. Outside Mount Moon, it cost me 500 Pokédollars for this old man to put his ball in my hand, and inside is a Magikarp. It may seem floppy and useless now, but with a bit of training, it'll be a force to be reckoned with. I get my choice of 2 fossils in Mount Moon, and I choose the Dome fossil, giving me a Kabuto later on in the game. At the Cerulean Pokemon Center, I get to make my overpowered Eevee a little bit more overpowered by giving him access to 3 new moves: electric, fire, and water type moves. The electric move is going to come in very handy for the next gym, which is against Misty and her water types. It seems that the gym leaders in this game use the teams that they use in the anime rather than the teams they use in the original Gen 1 games, since Misty had a Staryu and a Starmie originally. This time she's got a Psyduck. There's not a whole lot to talk about in this battle, since Buzzy Buzz is really overpowered this early in the game, and a couple of them just take out her ace. Buzzy Buzz seems to always paralyze, Sizzly Slide seems to always burn, and Bouncy Bubble has a sort of effect like Mega Drain and Giga Drain, where you do a bit of damage and heal a bit of health back. The next gift Pokemon requires us to have encountered 30 Pokemon. I actually took this the wrong way and thought I had to catch 30 different types of Pokemon, but I only had to catch 30. I could have caught 30 Pidgeys in the starting route and it would have counted. Anyway, it's a Charmander, and we get to call it Carrot. Teach this old man how useless his Eevee is compared to mine, and his face just says it all. As we head to Vermilion City to take on Lieutenant Surge, Officer Jenny wants us to take this Squirtle. Some of you may have already noticed, but we've actually missed an encounter at this point. There was a Bulbasaur we could pick up earlier in the game, but we'll go back and get that later. We nickname Squirtle Cabbage, and we head down to just above the gym, where there's a lady sitting on a bench. She wants us to catch 5 Meowth and show her, and in return, she'll give us another gift Pokemon. We evolve our Charmander into Charmeleon in preparation for the gym, and we head back to this lady after catching 5 Meowth. She gives us an Arcanine. This is absolutely insane. I swear this wasn't in the original Pokemon Yellow, which I think this game follows quite closely. Anyway, we head back to Cerulean City and pick up our Bulbasaur. After evolving Squirtle, we now have Wartortle, Charmeleon, Bulbasaur, Eevee, and Arcanine, making our team pretty overpowered at this point. While minding my own business, making my way through the SS Anne, I'm faced with this. After encountering that nightmare fuel, I go into another room and what is going on in this ship? I decided to stop walking into strangers' rooms unannounced and head to the end of the ship, where I run into my rival, Tragic. I'm not really bothered to show any of these battles since he's pretty useless this early in the game and we just wipe his entire team yet again. In preparation for Surge, I evolve Bulbasaur into Ivysaur and I evolve my Magikarp into a Gyarados. At this point in the run, I was seriously considering making this an Eevee only run, considering how well she was doing against every single enemy I came across. I'm glad I didn't, to be honest, because it started getting quite a bit harder as I got further through the game. But if that is something you're interested in seeing, let me know in the comments below and I'll definitely do a run later. I could even do one on Let's Go Pikachu with just Pikachu instead. Surge's first Pokemon, Voltorb, actually gets Eevee down to just over half health, and he manages to paralyze as well, which is not great. Just as Eevee was starting to look a little bit more defeatable, he manages to use his special ability and just delete any status effect whenever he feels like it. I'm not complaining since we go on to take Magikarp out with one hit and all that's left of his Raichu. I use Sizzly Slide to do some damage and get the burn off, and he goes for a Thunderbolt. I don't think we can survive another one of those, and after a little bit of chip from burn, I decide to just go for Sizzly Slide again since we outspeed anyway. We take it out, but that was the first time I actually saw Eevee in a bit of danger. Found a shiny Diglett, which is kind of crazy because it wasn't even part of the chain. I also play a shiny clause, which means if I find a legit shiny in any of my Pokemon runs, I let it join the team. I'm sure some people won't be happy with that since it's not a gift Pokemon, but I see a shiny Pokemon as a gift from above. This Muppet wants another battle as if I haven't embarrassed him enough already. He starts with his Pidgeot. Oh wait, it's a Pidgeotto, he hasn't even evolved it yet. One shot from Buzzy Buzz takes it out, and he sends in his next team member. He's actually improved quite a bit since the last time I fought him, so I'm going to be including the rival battles from here on out. He sends in his Raichu next, goes for a Thunder Punch, which gets the Paralyze off. We go for Sizzly Slide and land the Burn. Suppose Eevee doesn't feel like deleting Paralysis this time, and she gets hit with a Thunder Shock, doesn't really do much. She ends up being fully paralysed, and we go for a Sizzly Slide next turn. He uses a Hyper Potion, which is kind of annoying, but ultimately doesn't really make much of a difference. He gets off another Thunder Shock, and one more Sizzly Slide takes his Raichu down. I would say his next matchup is the perfect type advantage for Eevee, but to be honest, with the spread of moves we've got at the moment, pretty much everything is. Bloom goes down in one hit, and we've managed to embarrass the embarrassment one more time. After the fight, we evolve our shiny boy into a Dugtrio. It seems I've angered the Nuzlocke gods by allowing my shiny Diglett as a team member, and this random trainer with a one-hit KO move managed to take down Gyarados. I wasn't recording at the time of the battle, but I thought I'd just let you guys know since I'm releasing him now. The next set of moves I can teach to my Eevee are the Psychic type move and the Dark type move. He's now got Dark, Electric, Psychic and Water type moves. Against the Team Rocket admin, I made a grave error.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
I really thought we were going to outspeed that Golbat, but unfortunately Arcanine goes down. I'm forced to send in Cabbage on low health, and it seems the Nuzlocke gods have forgiven me, as Golbat misses. It was getting pretty twitchy there, but since Giovanni doesn't seem to know about type coverage whatsoever, we managed to take him out even easier than the admin. Lettuce evolves into a Venusaur, and Erika's up next for the 4th gym badge with her grass types. She leads with her Tangler, and the only issue I really have here is that Charmeleon's only fire type move is Ember, which isn't too good to be honest. We go for one Ember, and her Tangler goes for a Sleep Powder. Luckily it misses, which means this fight's completely free. We take down her Tangler, and next up is her Weeping Bell. In theory, this thing shouldn't be much of a threat either, so I just go for another Ember, taking it below half. It retaliates with a Poison Jab, which does way more than I was expecting. It takes Charmeleon below half health, and another Ember is enough to take Weeping Bell out. I don't really want to leave Charmeleon in for the next fight against Vileplume, since I really want Charizard to survive for the end of the game. I send in Eevee next, and my plan is to just use my Psychic type move to damage this thing. One Mega Drain takes about a third of Eevee's health, which isn't too bad, but considering next turn if he uses it again he's going to heal, we might not be able to take this thing out in 2 hits. What I didn't realise at the time about Eevee's 2 new moves is that the Psychic type Glitzy Glow sets up Light Screen, and the Dark type Baddie Bad sets up Reflect. This means that Mega Drain doesn't really do anything with Light Screen up, and we managed to take it down to a tiny slither. It goes for one more Mega Drain, healing barely anything, and we take it out next turn with another Glitzy Glow. Eevee landed a critical hit here, but it didn't really matter anyway, and with that, Erika's beaten, and we have the 4th gym badge. In the gym that's not really a gym, but it is a gym, but it doesn't give you a gym badge. It does give you a Pokemon, and all the gym trainers are Karate Masters, which would actually technically make it a dojo, but it is a gym apparently. We managed to take on the Karate Master and defeat his Poliwrath in 2 hits. This gives us access to our next gift Pokemon. I picked Hitmonlee because why would you not pick Hitmonlee over Hitmonchan? Head to the Silph Company where we take on Team Rocket and Giovanni again. There was a little bit of other story stuff in between this, but no major battles, so I just skipped ahead to here. I led with Blastoise, and he led with his signature Persian, which managed to get the flinch off on the first move. He went for a slash next turn, which didn't do too much, and I taught Blastoise Brick Break, which is super effective against normal types. We don't quite do half damage, so next turn we take it down to a Slither, and we go for another Brick Break. Unfortunately, with a critical hit, this means that Blastoise is pretty much unusable for the rest of the fight, and I'm going to have to switch. Obviously, with this being set mode, it's kind of annoying because I'm going to get hit with one of Rhyhorn's moves. I decided to switch into Venusaur since it's an absolute tank and it's probably not going to take much damage from this thing. It tried to use a Mega Horn, which would have been really bad, but it actually missed. We went for Petal Dance next, and I didn't realise this is a move that actually locks you into using it again next turn. It's pretty handy that I found this out now, because it could have been a problem if I used it at the wrong time later, not realising I'd be locked into using it again. After landing a weak Petal Dance against his Nidoqueen, Venusaur's now confused. He goes for a Body Slam and paralyses him as well. I decided to go for a Mega Drain next turn, since it's enough of a tank that this isn't going to be too much of a problem. We managed to hit ourselves in confusion, and I decided to try and set up Leech Seed next so I can switch into something else. He goes for another Body Slam, taking us down to a tiny little bit of health, and we hit ourselves again, going into the red. This is kind of annoying, but luckily this is his last Pokemon, and I still have 4 team members with full health. On my way to this fight, I picked up a Lapras. This is going to come in pretty handy later on in the game, as it has access to Ice-type moves, and obviously with Lance being one of the Elite Four members and using Dragon types, it's really useful. He can also learn a wide range of different moves like Psychic, which I use here, and Thunderbolt that I taught him as well. I also taught him Confuse Ray for a bit of versatility, and one more Psychic is enough to take out his Nidoqueen and finish off Giovanni. We can also pick up another team member now. After beating the Silph Co, you can go to the Pokemon Center and pick up this Porygon from this member of the Silph Company as a thank you for saving them. You have to be careful at this point when doing a Nuzlocke in this game, because Koga and Sabrina, being the 5th and 6th gym leaders, both have the same level cap of 44. There's a slight issue that you run into in this run as well, which is that you're forced to meet certain requirements before entering any gym. In Sabrina's gym, the requirement is to have a Pokemon that's level 45. Now I could train up a random Pokemon to level 45 that I'm not going to use in the run and use that just to gain entry and then use my team at level 44, but unfortunately I have a life and I'm not going to be doing that. I hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me, but if not, please write an angry comment below and I'll make sure I don't read it. As you can see, Glitzy Glow is doing a lot of damage to Koga's team members, and next up is his Muck. Unfortunately, Eevee's been poisoned and he's not going to last too long. It's at this point that I realised how much of a horrible man Koga is. He's going for a Poison, Protect, Stall strat. This is the lowest of the low, and I don't think I will ever be able to forgive this man. I thought with him being a ninja master and a gym leader, he'd have a bit of honour and decorum, but apparently not. After a few more stall strats, he goes for a Sludge Bomb out of nowhere, and the Poison Chip is just proving a little bit too much. Light Screen also wears off and Eevee survives with 4 HP. It's time to switch now, and I decide to send in Charizard. I've had enough of this guy's nonsense. He's made a dangerous enemy this day, and I plan to burn his entire team to a crisp. Koga has other plans, and takes Charizard down to nearly half health with 1 Sludge Bomb. Luckily a Flamethrower is enough to take out the Muck, and next up is his Golbat. I went for another Flamethrower as he goes for a Protect, just wasting a turn. I click Flamethrower again, and this time we outspeed. We do about half health, and he uses Fly. The smart move here would have been to just use Fly myself, so I don't really know what I was thinking here, but I went for Roost instead. After healing back up to full health, he hits us with a Fly, taking us back to pretty much exactly where we were before. I go for another Flamethrower, this time he goes for Protect again. It's getting really annoying now, and I can see why people don't like this fight. Go for another Flamethrower, taking him down to just a little Slither. He of course sets up a Toxic, and I know next turn he's going to go for Protect. This is so irritating, but there's not really a whole lot I could do. I could have used Roost, but I'm an idiot and went for Flamethrower. He obviously protected, and we got another chip damage from the poison. Went for Flamethrower again, knowing that he couldn't use Protect twice in a row, and this time we take out the goal back. I really should have used Roost there, as Charizard would probably have about 3/4 of his health now. I would say you live and you learn, but clearly I don't. Next up is his Venomoth, and I'm forced to switch, even though I'd love to use a Flamethrower on this thing. I decided to switch into my tank Venusaur and see how much damage I could do to this thing. He goes for a Sludge Bomb, which isn't going to do too much since it's poison, and it does a lot more than I thought it would. He goes for a Protect here, which was kind of a weird one because I wasn't sure if Leech Seed would actually work with a Protect. It doesn't, and I go for a Leech Seed again next turn, not realising this thing had Psychic. Takes Venusaur down to 15 HP, and this is not looking great. I decide to switch into Garlic, my Lapras, and I'm going to go for Ice Beam now. He hits us with a Psychic, which doesn't really do too much, and it's clear that I probably should have just switched into Lapras in the first place. I picked Ice Beam. I don't know if Thunderbolt would have actually been a better bet here. He goes for Bug Buzz, which does a little bit more than Psychic did. It looks like I can get another Ice Beam off, as he just goes for a Sludge Bomb, taking us down into the red. One more Ice Beam takes him down to one more hit, but Lapras isn't going to outspeed this, and I'm forced to switch again. I send in my new Porygon, and I'm going to hope for the best here. Porygon's severely underleveled compared to the rest of my team, and one Bug Buzz takes him down really low. I'm going to have to go for a Thunderbolt here and just hope that we outspeed, which we don't. So unfortunately, Porygon goes down in his debut match. This is okay because it means I get a clean switch into my next Pokemon, but I'm a little bit confused as to what to do here. My team's in tatters, and all I've got left is Beetroot, the Hitmonlee. There was a good chance the Charizard would outspeed here, but I didn't want to risk losing him, so I sent Hitmonlee anyway. I went for a Facade, and luckily he hung on with just a slither of health, and hit back, finishing Koga off. That was really close. Sabrina's up next, and she leads with her setup Pokemon, Mr. Mime. This thing's going to be kind of annoying, so I decided to send Eevee in straight away with super effective Baddie Badge, setting up a Reflect of my own. It did way less damage than I was hoping it would, and he sets up a Reflect. This is a little bit annoying, but I think Eevee can handle it. I go for another Baddie Bad, and I think it's going to go for a Light Screen this turn. We take it down into the orange, and it does. It uses now Light Screen and Reflect, meaning that special attack moves and normal attack moves aren't going to do quite as much damage. We go for another Baddie Bad, and we see the effects of these moves. This is not great as we get hit with quite a powerful Psychic, and I decided to go for a Glitzy Glow now. This means we'll set up a Light Screen of our own, and at least level the playing field a little bit. Obviously Glitzy Glow doesn't do very much damage considering Mr. Mime is a Psychic type anyway, and he goes for a Psychic. It doesn't do quite as much as last time considering now we've got Light Screen up. Tried going for the new Fairy type move next, and no surprises, it didn't really do very much damage. It's okay though, since next turn I can probably take out her Mr. Mime with ease. He goes for a Psychic doing basically no damage, and Reflect wears off. I went for a Bouncy Bubble here since I think pretty much anything's going to take this thing out at this point, and I might as well gain a little bit of health back anyway. We get back up into the green, and we beat her Mr. Mime just in time for Light Screen to wear off. Next up is going to be her Slowbro, and this thing should be a little bit easier to take out, especially without its defensive boosts. I go for a Baddie Bad to set up Reflect again, and it does quite a lot of damage to be honest. It takes it below half health. We've now set up Reflect, and it goes for a Psychic, of course. It doesn't actually do very much damage at all, and I just go for another Baddie Bad to finish it off. I could have gone for Glitzy Glow here and set up a Light Screen, but I didn't really think it was worth it since I could take it out this turn anyway. The next Pokemon's a Jinx, and I decide to go for a Glitzy Glow to set up Light Screen again. I know this isn't going to do very much damage, but that's not the point in me using it anyway. The Jinx decides to go for a Lovely Kiss, which is kind of annoying because it'll confuse, but luckily Eevee manages to dodge. We go for a Bubbly Bubble next to try and get a little bit of our health back, and it doesn't do very much damage. It does get us back into the green, but with Jinx using a Psychic the same turn, we go back into the orange again. We did about as much damage as the Jinx did back to us, so I just go for another one again. This way I'm probably going to stay on roughly the same health and I'll be able to take the Jinx down, leaving her with only one team member. She goes for a lovely kiss again and Eevee dodges it once again. This is quite good because this means that we didn't actually take any damage that turn, meaning we stay in the green. I decide to go for another Glitzy Glow, setting up a light screen. I'm doing this because our Alakazam's coming in next and I want to have as many turns of light screen left when it comes in as I possibly can. I go for one more bubbly bubble to get a bit of health back, and with that we take out her Jinx, leaving only her Ace. Our Alakazam's a serious problem with a beastly special attack stat. Even with light screen it's doing massive damage. I go for a baddie bad and it does about half health, but I know Eevee can't stay in. It doesn't outspeed this thing and it's definitely going down to another Psychic. I'm not really sure what to switch into here, since if I go for Venusaur, it's going to be super effective. Honestly, watching this back, I really don't know what I was thinking. I decide to switch into my Dugtrio, which is also weak to Psychic moves. I really don't know what the thought process here was. I don't even think I was trying to sacrifice it for a clean switch, but maybe that's what I was going for. It wasn't a legitimate Pokemon to use in the run, considering it was only being used as a shiny from the shiny claws, so it's kind of fitting that it goes down like this anyway. With the clean switch into Lapras, I can use Confuse Ray on this thing and hope that it hits itself. That would also mean that it gets a turn where it doesn't use its Psychic, so I can just keep switching in from here if I need to, and then by the time it hits itself in Confusion, I'll get a free hit off against it. With Lapras being a pretty decent tank in itself, it manages to tank one of the Psychics, meaning I can use a move next turn. Even if it gets a Psychic through, it's still not going to kill me. It used Nightshade next turn, which was a bit weird, and it did less than Psychic. Not too much less. Enough that it would mean that next turn, it would take me out and I'd have to switch. Luckily we land the Ice Beam and take it out in one hit. I probably should have just used that first turn anyway. We head back to Pewter City to get the old Amber, as now it's time to go to Cinnabar Island. I head through the Seafoam Caves and head over to the Cinnabar Island Research Laboratory where I can revive my fossils. I also caught an Articuno here, but obviously I can't use it for the run, so I just put it in the PC. We revive the Dome Fossil, giving us a Kabuto, and we revive the old Amber, giving us an Aerodactyl. Kabuto's not going to be much help at the moment, so we put it in the PC. Aerodactyl, on the other hand, is going to be a great replacement for Dugtrio, so I add it to the team. We've also got Blaine up next with his fire types, meaning that Aerodactyl's rock moves are going to be super effective. We also have Eevee with his water type move that also heals, and Blastoise with water type moves as well. In theory, this gym should be easy. He starts with his Magmar and Eevee makes light work of it. He goes for his Rapidash next, and we're just healing way too quickly. He can't even do enough damage to us, and even his own moves are doing damage to him. We didn't get to heal much on the last move on his Rapidash since it didn't have much health left anyway. He sends in his Arcanine next, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to go back to full health with this next Bubbly Bubble. That's exactly what happens as he hits himself with Recoil, and we go for another healing water move. We go above the green, and it's time for his ace, Ninetales. We're just going to keep going for the same move here. Sometimes that's just the best strat. I mean, if it works, it works. It might be a little bit boring, but that's how I beat Blaine, and it was really easy. We head back to Radiant City, and it's time to take on Giovanni once again. This guy's an absolutely useless man, and water type moves are just going to decimate him as well. For his Nidoking, we can switch to Glitzy Glow, which is a psychic type, being super effective against poison and setting up light screen. He then goes for another Earthquake, bringing Eevee down into the orange. I go for one more Glitzy Glow and take down his Nidoking. This also resets the 5 turns for light screen, and next up he's going to send in his Rhydon. I could take this one out with a water type move, and we're getting pretty low on health here, so it means we're going to heal Eevee right back up again. It goes down in one hit, and Eevee goes back up to full health pretty much. His last Pokemon's a Nidoqueen, which is going to be exactly the same as Nidoking, and we're going to set up light screen once again. We don't do quite half health with this, but his Earthquake isn't doing enough to be a problem anyway, so we just go for another Glitzy Glow, taking it down into the red. He goes for another Earthquake, taking us down into the orange, and one more Glitzy Glow finishes off Giovanni and gets us our 8th gym badge. It's time for the Elite Four now, so we head over to the Pokemon League. They've actually switched up the order here a little bit, so the first team member that we're going to fight is Lorelei. She uses Ice types, so you'd expect us to use Charizard first, but I'm actually going to go for Lapras. I taught Lapras Thunderbolt, which is going to be super effective against her Dugong. He's also very tanky, so he can survive quite a lot of hits from most of her Pokemon. With him being an Ice type as well, she can't really do anything to him. She just goes for an Ice Shard and does like less than a Poison Chip. She literally can't even retaliate and just goes for a second Ice Shard, knowing full well that it's going to do basically nothing. We take her down to a red little Slither, and she goes for a Waterfall next turn. This does a tiny little bit more, but still basically nothing. We hit with another Thunderbolt and take out her Dugong with ease. Next up is her Jinx, and I decide to switch into Eevee. She goes for a lovely kiss, putting Eevee to sleep, but like the absolute unit that he is, he just wakes himself up. This Eevee's so overpowered, and I don't know how it's even allowed. I go for a baddie bad next, and do a massive amount of damage, also setting up the Reflect. There's not a whole lot that she can do next move, so she just goes for a Blizzard. It does a fair amount of damage, but I think she was hoping for the freeze there. She didn't get it, and we go for another baddie bad, taking her Jinx out with ease. She sends in her Cloyster next, so I switch to Lapras, and since it's set mode, it gets to use Hydro Pump. It misses, and we go for a Thunderbolt next turn. He goes for another Hydro Pump and outspeeds next turn. This time it hits, but it doesn't do really anything. Thunderbolt hits the Cloyster out in one hit, and it's a critical hit. I don't know if we needed the crit here, but I'm not complaining. She sends in her Slowbro next, and I just go for another Thunderbolt. We do actually manage to outspeed this time, and we don't really get it below half health. It's still in the green, but we do get a Paralyze. He goes for a Psychic this time, and it's actually the first move that did a considerable amount of damage to Lapras. It's still not enough, and I go for another Thunderbolt, taking it down to the red. It manages to get Paralyzed next turn, which is excellent. It means one more Thunderbolt would be enough to take it out, but I'd actually like to preserve the PP of my Thunderbolt, so I go for Ice Beam instead, knowing it will take it out anyway. I don't know if she's trying to be funny or something, but she sends in her own Lapras next. Her one doesn't know Thunderbolt, however, so I've still got the advantage. I hit it with a Thunderbolt as it goes for a Dragon Pulse. I'm not going to lie, I actually got a little bit scared when I read Dragon Pulse, but it still didn't do really any damage. I go for another Thunderbolt next turn. I think one more is going to be enough to take it out. She just has to go for Dragon Pulse again, which isn't really doing anything. And I click Thunderbolt one more time, and this means we take out our first Elite Four member completely deathless. I mean, the run's not deathless, but the Elite Four is. This is important because we don't get access to the PC in here, so if we lose a team member in a fight, we can't replace them, even though we have replacements in the PC. Next up is the original first Elite Four member, Bruno. He's got Rock and Fighting types, so I start with Eevee to go for a Bubbly Bubble against this Onix. I know this is going to be super effective, and for some reason his Onix doesn't have Sturdy, which is Onix's best ability. Kind of strange, but each to their own. He sends in his Poliwrath next, which is kind of a weird one since it's a water type. I haven't really got like an electric or anything that I could use here, so I decide to switch into Lapras, knowing he's probably going to use a water type move. Could have switched to Venusaur here, but I don't look up the movesets of the Elite Four and the gym leaders because I like the surprise, and I didn't know whether he'd have Ice Punch or Ice Beam, which would have been really dangerous for Venusaur. He used Super Power, which I wasn't really expecting, and it did massive damage to Lapras. I decided to just send in Venusaur anyway, as he went for another Super Power, doing basically nothing. This is good because I knew he was going to go for Super Power again, and I knew I could get a clean switch into Venusaur. I went for a bit of a risky tactic here, and used Growth. I was kind of doing this as well to test whether he had an Ice type move, but he just went for Super Power again. He's now lowering his own stats, meaning that I can just keep going for Growth, and he can just keep weakening himself, setting me up for the rest of his team. Hopefully Venusaur can get a sweep here. He goes for a Body Slam next, and luckily it doesn't get the paralysis. I decided to click Growth again, meaning that I've now got 3 stacks of Growth. Our special attack and attack stat are absolutely through the roof here, and he's lowered his defense and his attack pretty much every turn. I decided to Mega Evolve here, which I probably should have done 3 turns ago and got the extra defense boost, but what can you do? I also went for Mega Drain here, since it's going to be super effective and I can pretty much heal up all the damage that he's done previously. We've now got massive stats and full health, and it's not looking good for Bruno. Lapras also leveled up here and learnt Blizzard, which could come in handy for Lance's Dragon types. I kept Venusaur in and went for another Mega Drain, taking out his Hitmonchan in one hit. His Machamp's up next, and one Mega Drain takes it out with ease. His Hitmonlee also goes down to one Mega Drain, and that was probably the easiest Elite 4 fight I've ever had. It really helps when you can set up like that on a Pokemon that can do absolutely nothing to you. Next up is Agatha, and we need to find Samantha as soon as oh wait, wrong game, sorry. Next up is Agatha, and we send in Eevee against her Arbok. She starts with her Arbok, giving us the perfect excuse to set up a Glitzy Glow and a Light Screen. It survives with a tiny little bit of health, even after landing a critical hit. It goes for a Glare, which is kind of annoying because it paralyzes Eevee. Eevee doesn't break through the paralysis, and it goes for a Poison Jab next turn. Eevee was my big contender for this fight, and it's kind of annoying to have it paralysed and weakened at this point. I thought I would take the Arbok out in one hit really, so this is not great. It manages to break through the paralysis as she sends out her Gengar. I go for a baddie bad since it's going to be super effective here, and it means we can set up a Reflect as well. He hits a Sludge Bomb for not too much damage, and we take it way below half health. One more baddie bad should take this thing out with no trouble. It goes for a Will-O-Wisp. This lands the burn, which is a little bit irritating, but the main reason that this is annoying is that it weakens our attack stat. We take out the Gengar as Eevee breaks through the burn. It's kind of overpowered that she can just delete status effects like that, but what can you do? We go for a Glitzy Glow next turn against her Poison type Weezing, and we take it way below half health. This also resets Light Screen as she goes for a weak Sludge Bomb. This hits the Poison, which gets a little bit of chip. I guess Light Screen doesn't reset when you use Glitzy Glow again. It wore off this turn, which is weird since I used Glitzy Glow this turn anyway. I just go for another one setting up the Light Screen again, but it means that we went one turn without it. Eevee's getting pretty low here, and the Poison Chip does even more damage. It's looking like I'm going to have to switch out to take out this Gengar, and she still has another Pokemon afterwards. I was hoping Eevee could wipe our whole team here. I switch into Lapras as it's probably my best bet. I'm hoping with its tanky HP and defense stats, and the fact that Light Screen's still up, Sludge Bomb won't do too much. I was right, and it means next turn I can go for a Psychic, which will be super effective. It hits with another Sludge Bomb doing not very much damage and not getting the poison off, and Psychic takes it below half health. Goes for another Sludge Bomb next turn, and it doesn't get the poison again, meaning that one more Psychic can take out her second Gengar. The final Pokemon is a Golbat, and since Lapras knows Thunderbolt, this should be really easy. It gets a critical hit crunch, and we get a Thunderbolt off, taking it below half health. One more Thunderbolt should be enough to finish this thing off, as it just goes for another crunch. It doesn't even take us into the red, and Thunderbolt takes down her Golbat. This is the third Elite 4 member completely deathless, meaning we still have 6 team members going into the fight against Lance. For this fight, we have Eevee with a Fairy type move, Lapras with 2 Ice type moves, and Blastoise, who I've taught Ice Beam too. Like I said earlier, I don't look up teams before I go into these fights, so it's kind of annoying that I started with Blastoise here, since Lapras would have been the best bet. I would have been able to use Thunderbolt and taken this thing out with ease. I decided to go for Bite instead since I thought it would do the most damage, and there's a good chance that I could get a flinch off. I just kept going for Bite as it kept going for Dragon Pulse. I took it down to the point where one more hit would take it out, and it decided to go for a Hyper Beam. It didn't do quite as much as I thought it would, and one more bite was more than enough to take it out, considering it had to recharge this turn anyway. I would have outspeed the next turn if it survived, and taken it out with one more bite anyway. His next Pokemon's an Aerodactyl, so I decided to go for a Flash Cannon. It went for Rock Slide here, and I'm not going to lie, I panicked a little bit. I thought it would do way more damage than that, as a Flash Cannon takes Aerodactyl down below half health and lowers its special defense. I just click Flash Cannon again, and it manages to miss its next move. Flash Cannon takes out the Aerodactyl, and that's 2 of his team members down already. His next team member is a Gyarados, and I don't really want to risk losing Blastoise here, so I switch out to Lapras. I can use a Thunderbolt here, which is going to be 4 times effective, and take this thing out pretty easily. It hits us with a Waterfall, doing basically nothing, and it goes for an Iron Tail next turn, doing slightly more, but still not very much. One Thunderbolt takes it below half health, and it goes for another Iron Tail, taking us into the orange. Another Thunderbolt finishes off his Gyarados, and he's only got 2 team members left now. His Charizard's up next, and with Blastoise and Lapras pretty low, there's not a whole lot I can do here. I do have Aerodactyl in the back, which means that I could switch into a Rock type, which would be great against Charizard. I decided to go for a Thunderbolt and see how much damage he could do to Lapras. He didn't do too much the first turn, but when he went for a Hyper Beam the next turn, I thought that was the end of Lapras. We survived with 9 HP and hit another Thunderbolt, taking out Charizard. We're definitely going to have to switch to a different Pokemon here as he sends out Dragonite, but he's going to get a free hit on whatever I send out, so I don't really know what to do. I decided to just go for Eevee since it's so overpowered and see what happens. His Charizard went for an Outrage, but we managed to dodge it. This is why Eevee's the best. I go for a Sparkly Swirl, which I taught specifically for this fight against Dragonite, and it does way less than I thought it would. Dragonite goes for an Outrage next turn and takes us just above half health. I have a good feeling we can survive another one, but as a commenter mentioned in my last video, sometimes moves will do more damage than they did last turn, so they have a range. They could do a small amount or they could do a larger amount. You never know how much damage the next hit's going to do, so I went for Bouncy Bubble to heal up a little bit. We survived with 19 HP, and I'm not sure we actually would have survived that if we didn't heal. I decide to switch into Lettuce next, and he goes for an Outrage. This does more than half health, but he manages to confuse himself next turn. I decided to Mega Evolve so that I'd definitely be able to survive, and I go for a Mega Drain. I'm not even sure if we're going to outspeed here, but we do, and we get the Mega Drain off. It does basically nothing, and I'm actually a little bit worried that if he hits an Outrage here, Venusaur could go down. He hits himself in confusion, which is really lucky, so I decide to set up the Leech Seed next turn. He confuses himself again, but this time he hits an Outrage, taking us into the red. Leech Seed heals us up a little bit more, but unfortunately we're going to have to switch here. The fact that we've got the Leech Seed set up means that as long as we can survive here, Leech Seed should finish him off. I decide to switch into Aerodactyl since I don't think Outrage is going to do too much to him, and he manages to break through his confusion. It did way more than I thought it would, but with the chip from Leech Seed, one more of these should be enough. We also have someone in the back, Charizard, who could probably tank another hit, but I don't want to risk it. I decide to go for a Dragon Pulse, and we manage to outspeed. We take down the Dragonite and beat Lance, meaning we've taken out the entire Elite Four without losing a single team member. Our final fight is against the champion, Tragic, and we have all 6 of our team members. This is perfect, and I actually genuinely think I'm going to finish a Nuzlocke for the first time in my life. I decided to start with Blastoise and Mega Evolve into an Ice Beam. He starts with his Pidgeot and Mega Evolves into Super Saiyan Goku. I'm not too worried about this thing, as I think an Ice Beam's probably going to take it out in one hit, if not 2. He uses an Air Slash and does a decent amount of damage, but a critical hit takes it out. I don't know if we needed the crit there, but again, I'm not complaining. He sends in his Vileplume next, and this could be a bit dangerous. I decided to switch into Charizard, expecting it to use a Grass type move. That's exactly what it does. It absorbs the light, setting up a Solar Beam, and we go for a Flamethrower. Solar Beam's not really going to do very much to Charizard, but it's locked in now, so it's got to use it. It hits Charizard for basically nothing, and one more Flamethrower should be enough to take his Vileplume down. He actually does something smart for the first time in his entire life and switches out to Slowbro as I go for a Flamethrower. He's absolutely had me up there, and I'm going to have to switch into Lapras. I send in Lapras, and the plan here is to just go for Thunderbolt. He set up a light screen here, which is kind of annoying, but I decide to just go for Thunderbolt anyway. To be honest, I can stall out the light screen a little bit here, since he can't do a massive amount of damage to Lapras anyway, so I can just keep going for Thunderbolt, wasting light screen moves. He switches into Vileplume on my Thunderbolt and he is absolutely having me up here. I did basically nothing with that, but I did actually manage to get the paralysis off, so I guess I get the last laugh. I also have Ice Beam in the back, so I can take his Vileplume out next turn. Not so clever now, are we, Tragic? He sends in his Raichu next, which is going to be a bit of a problem, so I decide to switch into Venusaur. He's probably going to use an electric type move here, which won't do too much. He does. He goes for a Thunder, and he gets the paralysis. Of course he does. It's okay, because we're going to set up Leech Seed here anyway, and we break through paralysis, landing it. This means we're going to do a little bit of chip and get a little bit of health back every turn anyway. It's kind of annoying that we're paralysed, but I'm not going to switch out here. I'm just going to keep going for Sludge Bomb, because I think I can take this thing out anyway. He manages to break the paralysis, which I thought only Eevee could do, but that's just another reason why this game's a bit easier than others. I go for another Sludge Bomb as he misses an Iron Tail, and with that we've taken out his Raichu. He should only have 3 team members left now, and he sends in Rapidash. This is annoying because I'm going to have to switch again, but at least I've Mega Evolved my Blastoise, and when I switch it back in, he goes for a Flare Blitz, doing barely anything and hurting himself with recoil. I go for Bubble Beam next turn, and he goes for another Flare Blitz, even though it really didn't do anything last turn. He damages himself again. We hit the Bubble Beam and take his Rapidash out in one hit. He's only got 2 team members left and we still have our full team. This is looking really good. He sends his Slowbro back in and I switch back to Eevee. He sets up another light screen, which is really irritating, but I just go for a baddie bad next turn. It doesn't quite do half of what he's got left and he goes for a Surf. This doesn't really do too much to Eevee, so I'm not too worried. I go for another baddie bad. This is also setting up Reflect, which I'm not sure if we're going to need for his last Pokemon, but it's always handy to have. He's left with a Slither, and he goes for another Surf. I go for a baddie bad to finish it off, and he fully heals with a full Restore. Does he not realise we're playing a Nuzlocke here? He just thinks he can just use full Restores as much as he likes. Anyway, with him cheating, he goes for a Psychic next turn, taking us into the red. It's only got half its health left now, so I'm going to switch into Lapras. I can just keep going for Thunderbolt here, as I knew he was going to use Surf again, doing absolutely nothing. His Reflect wears off, and we go for a Thunderbolt. He's left with a Slither, and he goes for a Psychic, meaning next turn I can take him out with a Thunderbolt. This absolute clown has another idea, and uses a second full Restore. Oh well, we go for a Thunderbolt, taking him to half health, and he switches into his Marowak. This is actually the Cubone from the Lavender City Tower earlier in the game, which is kind of a cool addition. I go for a Psychic, and it only does a tiny little bit. He uses a Brick Break, taking us into the red, and it's time to switch Pokemon again. I switch into my Venusaur, as I don't think there's a whole lot he can do against it. He goes for a Brick Break, doing basically nothing, and we set up Leech Seed again. Like I said earlier, I don't look up the movesets before these matches, and I didn't realise he had Fire Punch. Kind of annoying, but at least we've got the Leech Seed to heal up a little bit more. I decide to go for a Sludge Bomb next turn and see how much damage it'll do. Again, it doesn't really do too much as he goes for another Fire Punch. Leech Seed means we can take one more Fire Punch, so I decide to just go for Sludge Bomb again. He decided to use another full Restore. That is 3 now, which is completely ridiculous. But at least our next Sludge Bomb lands the Poison, meaning he's now going to get Chip from Poison and Chip from Leech Seed. This is pretty good, so I go for a Mega Drain next, just meaning I can get as much health back as I possibly can. It looks like I probably should have used Mega Drain in the first place, since it did huge damage. We're almost back up to full health, and he sends in his Slowbro. I know he's got Psychic, which could quite easily take out Venusaur, but I've also got Mega Drain. I finish it off in one hit, and with that, we take out Tragic. This is the run over, and I have finally beat a Nuzlocke. It may have been on one of the easier games, but I'm still really proud of myself and happy that I've actually managed to finish one. This has given me the confidence to do a harder run later, and I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. It helps way more than you think. If you have any suggestions on how I can improve, please feel free to comment below. I'm working on getting an overlay so that you guys can see my team while I'm playing through the game, but it's proven to be a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be. If you've got any suggestions for future runs that you want me to do or you'd like to see, please feel free to let me know, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.